Memphis, 1957, the year rock and roll shook the world. The Greyhound bus terminal reeked of diesel and desperation. Soldiers back from Korea smoked Luckies in the shadows. Black families huddled under whites-only signs, and wide-eyed girls clutched Heartbreak Hotel 45s, dreaming of a hip-swaying boy from Tupelo. None noticed a hunched figure in a frayed denim jacket and scuffed boots boarding the last bus to Nashville. His signature jet-black curls were buried under a grease-stained baseball cap. His face, a face that launched 1,000 screams, was shadowed by stubble. Only one detail betrayed him. A chipped guitar pick on a leather cord, glowing faintly under his collar like a secret. Elvis Presley wasn't the king tonight. He was just another ghost in seat 12B, running from the crown the world had forced onto his head. Reporters called him a rebel without a cause. Preachers spat devil's music. And fans wanted to devour him alive. But tonight, Elvis wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing the boy he'd been before fame stole his name. Somewhere between Memphis and Nashville. The bus groaned to a halt outside the Blue Moon Diner, a neon-lit shack perched on the edge of nowhere. Passengers stumbled out, stretching stiff limbs under a sky smeared with stars. Elvis stayed put, head against the window, until a voice cut through his haze. "Coffee, or are you going to rot there all night?" Darlene, the diner's sharp-tongued waitress, loomed over him. Her pink uniform was starched stiff, her red lipstick a sneer. "Ain't thirsty," Elvis mumbled, tugging his cap lower. Her eyes narrowed at the pick dangling from his neck. "Well, looky here. That's some kind of trophy." She snorted, loud enough for the nearby passengers to hear. "Bet you stole it off a real musician." Laughter crackled like static. A truck driver in the back spat tobacco juice into a cup. "Leave the man be, Darlene." "Why?" "He your cousin?" She shot back, hands on her hips. "Ain't my fault he's dressing like a jukebox junkie." Elvis's grip tightened on the pick. Jedediah Blue Hawkins, the old black blues man who taught him guitar in the cotton fields, had given it to him days before his lungs gave out. "Music ain't in the strings, boy." Blue had wheezed, pressing the pick into his palm. "It's in the scars life carves on your soul." Back on the bus, silence thickened like fog, until the old man in seat 5A spoke. Clarence Morgan, a retired railroad engineer with milky eyes, leaned toward Elvis. "That pick, it's Memphis mud, ain't it?" Elvis stiffened. "You know it?" "Know the hands that made it," Clarence rasped. Blue Hawkins played the blues down on Beale Street, for they paved it with tourists. Folks said he could make a guitar weep like a widow. Darlene, lugging an ice bucket up the aisle, froze. Blue Hawkins? That old Negro who croaked in a flop house. Clarence's jaw tightened. Died working 2 jobs to save his girl from polio. That pick. He pointed a trembling finger. He carved it from his wife's coffin wood. "You're that white kid he took under his wing. The one they called Snowflake with a Negro soul." The bus lurched to a stop. Every head turned as Elvis stood, cap falling, golden curls spilling into the dim light. Darlene smirk-eyed. "Sweet Jesus, you're your Elvis." But before the gas could turn to screams, red police lights flooded the windows. 2 officers stormed aboard, flashlights slicing through the dark. "Looking for a fugitive," barked one, waving a wanted poster. The sketch. A man in denim, scuffed boots, and a leather cord around his neck. Elvis's hand flew to the pick. They'd found him. Nashville, 1957, where the blues bleed into midnight. The cop's flashlight beam pinned Elvis against the bus seat, his curls glowing like a halo in the glare. The wanted poster trembled in the officer's grip. A sketch of a man in denim, guitar pick gleaming like a shiv. The caption screamed, "Wanted for inciting riots, Memphis mudslinger." Darlene's breath hitched. Inciting riots? The Elvis she knew from magazines was all swagger and smiles. Not this. Out. Now. The cop barked, hand on his holster. Elvis rose slowly, fingers brushing the pick. Clarence, the old railroad man, gripped his arm. "Don't let him take it, son. That pick's got more soul than this whole damn state." But as Elvis stepped into the cold, a second squad car skidded up, headlights blinding. Inside it, a man in a pinstripe suit smirked. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager or jailer, depending on the day. Y'all mind if I handle this? Parker drawled, flashing a wad of cash thicker than the Bible. My boy here's got a show tomorrow. Can't have him detained. The cops exchanged glances. Money talked. Elvis's freedom cost $500. Parker didn't drive Elvis to Nashville. He drove him to hell. A dirt road led to a crumbling church, its steeple leaning like a drunkard. Outside, torches flickered. A mob of white men in overalls and hate-filled eyes chanted. Ropes coiled like snakes in their fists. At their feet knelt a black teenager, his face bloodied. You did this, Parker hissed, shoving Elvis toward the scene. That damn pick. Your Blues Hawkins tribute gig in Memphis. Mixed crowd. Dance floor integration. He spat the word like rock gut whiskey. Now these good folks want to hang somebody. Sing for him. Calm him down, or that boy dies. Elvis's stomach turned. Parker had set this up, a show to prove Elvis was still a good OL boy. The pick burned against his chest. He stepped into the torchlight. That's him, a man roared. The mob surged. Elvis grabbed a rusted guitar propped against a tombstone. His fingers found the strings, and he struck a chord so raw it split the night. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. The crowd froze. It wasn't the song, it was how he sang it. Not the hip-shaking tease from TV, but a growl from the grave, a wail that sounded like Blue Hawkins himself. The Memphis mud pick glowed, its edges sharpening as if alive. The ropes dropped. The mob swayed, eyes glazed. The bloody boy scrambled into the dark. Parker's smirk-eyed. What in God's name? Crying all the time. The guitar string snapped, lashing Parker's cheek. He screamed, cash fluttering to the dirt. Elvis ran, the pick humming like a struck bell, leading him into the woods. Dawn found Elvis at a creek, the pick pulsing in his palm. He'd heard the stories, how Blue carved it from his wife's coffin after she died in childbirth, how the wood came from a tree struck by lightning, how it sang during storms. It ain't just wood, Blue had told him once, voice raw from cough syrup and cold dust. It's a bridge. One side's our world. The other's where the blues go to rest. A twig snapped. Elvis spun, raising the pick like a blade. Darlene stood there, her waitress uniform smudged with mud. She followed him. I want to help, she stammered, holding up a stolen first aid kit. They're saying on the radio you killed a man, but I saw your face when you sang. You ain't no killer. Elvis eyed her. Why care? She nodded at the pick. My daddy, he played with Blue Hawkins, back when they were boys. Said blues music could stop storms. She swallowed. Daddy got lynched for playing devil tunes. Blue buried him with his own hands. That pick, it's got my daddy's blood in the wood, don't it? Elvis's silence was answer enough. Mississippi Delta, 1957, where souls are traded for six-string fire. The figure stepped into the moonlight, and Elvis's breath caught. The man had Blue Hawkins' eyes, amber, weary, and sharp as broken glass. But his face was younger, smoother, framed by a Panama hat tilted low. A silver guitar pendant hung at his throat, its surface etched with symbols Elvis had seen only in Blue's old journals. You play a mean blues, snowflake. The man drawled, voice like gravel under a Cadillac wheel. But that pick ain't yours to wield. Darlene stepped forward, fists clenched. Who the hell are you? The stranger ignored her, staring at Elvis. Blue Hawkins owed a debt. One he passed to you when he gave you that splinter of coffin wood. Tonight it's due. They followed him to a skeletal oak tree at a forked dirt road, the crossroad to Highway 61 and 49, where Robert Johnson supposedly sold his soul. The air smelled of burnt sugar and rot. The man turned, his Panama hat dissolving into smoke, revealing horns curled like bass clefs. Name Scratch, he said, though Elvis knew better. What dat? Elvis growled, the pick searing his palm. Scratch smirked. Blue came here in 32, starving and sick. Begged me for the blues. I gave him power in exchange for his firstborn. Darlene gasped. Blue never had no kids. Not yet, he didn't. Scratch's grin widened. Then he met a sweet waitress in Clarksdale. 9 months later, poof. He snapped his fingers. A daughter, my property. But Blue hit her, broke our deal. Now you hold his pick, so you pay. Elvis's blood turned cold. How? Scratch leaned in, breath reeking of gin and grave soil. Play the devil's chord at sunrise. Not that pop trash you feed teenagers. The real blues. The kind that cracks the earth. Do it or the girl dies. A vision seared into Elvis's mind. A teenage girl with blues eyes, chained in a shack, singing a hymn. Blue's daughter. Back in the woods, Darlene shattered. That girl. Her mama was my aunt, she confessed, tears cutting through dirt on her cheeks. Daddy died protecting her from Scratch. Blue swore he'd keep her safe. Now she's got to be what? 20. Elvis stared at the pic. Why, Scratch won her. Her voice, Darlene whispered. Scratch collects soul songs. Hers is pure enough to break hell wide open. The pic pulsed, whispering in Blue's voice, play it, boy, but the chord'll cost you. Sunrise bled over the delta as Elvis stood at the crossroads. Darlene beside him. Scratch lounged on a rotted tree stump, tuning a blood-red guitar. One rule, Scratch said. No lying. Sing your truth or the girl screams. Elvis clenched the pic. He'd spent years hiding. The poverty, the racism he borrowed from Blue's world, the shame of outliving his mentor. Now, the strings cut his fingers as he played. Mama died crying. Daddy's hands were tied. I stole the blues from a black man's pride. Ain't no king, just a thief in the night. Traded my soul for the spotlight. The ground split. Ghosts clawed from the dirt. Sharecroppers, lynch musicians Blue himself, his spectral hands guiding Elvis's. The chord wasn't music. It was a hurricane of shame and glory. Darlene screamed as Scratch's shackle snapped. The girl, Lila Ray Hawkins, ran into the light, her voice joining Elvis's. You win, devil. Elvis roared. Take my voice. Let her go. Scratch laughed. Oh, I don't want you, Elvis. I want her. Lila Ray's song merged with the chord, her voice so pure it cracked the sky. Scratch lunged, but Blue's ghost materialized, blocking his path. Run, Blue shouted. Elvis grabbed Lila Ray and ran, Darlene at their heels. Behind them, Blue's ghost howled the final bars of the chord, binding Scratch to the crossroads, for now. Thinking process. Okay, the user wants me to continue the story from part 3 and write part 4. Let me recall the previous parts. In part 1, Elvis is incognito on a bus, meets Darlene, and is recognized by an old man who knows about his pick. Cops come looking for him. In part 2, Elvis is taken by Colonel Parker to a lynch mob, uses a pick's power to save a boy, escapes, and meets Darlene again, who reveals a connection to Blue's daughter. In part 3, they meet Scratch the Devil at the crossroads, who demands payment for Blue's debt. Elvis plays the devil's chord to save Lila Ray, Blue's daughter, with Blue's ghost helping them escape. Now, for part 4, I need to advance the story. The preview mentioned the gospel of Lila Ray, a rebellion born in the bellies of juke joints. So, Lila Ray's role becomes central. Elvis and the group are on the run. Parker is still a threat, and Scratch is after them. Possible elements to include developing Lila's character, her powers, and her connection to the pick. The group seeking refuge in a juke joint, which could be a safe haven or a trap. Maybe introduce allies or other musicians with their own debts to Scratch. Darlene's past and her father's connection to Blue. Colonel Parker's next move, perhaps collaborating with Scratch. The Memphis Mud picks deeper lore, and its role in the rebellion against Scratch. Need to maintain the dark, bluesy atmosphere with supernatural elements. Ensure continuity in characters' motivations and unresolved conflicts. Cliffhanger ending to set up part 5. Also, the user requested the same character count, so detailed descriptions and dialogues extend the story while keeping pacing tight. Check for consistency. Elvis's internal conflict about his authenticity, Darlene's redemption, Lila's hidden power, the pick's magic, and the looming threat of Scratch and Parker. Incorporate historical elements of the 1950s South, racism, and the music scene. Maybe show the beginning of rebellion, using music as a weapon against oppression, both supernatural and societal. Possible scenes. The group hides in a juke joint, meet resistance from locals, perform to rally support, face Parker's henchmen, discover more about the Pict's origin, Lila's powers manifest, Scratch's minions attack, and with a confrontation or a revelation. Part 4. The Gospel of Lila Ray, a rebellion born in the bellies of juke joints. Mississippi Delta, 1957, where music is a weapon and hope a fugitive. The juke joint crouched in the swamp like a wounded animal, its rusted sign reading The Howling Dog. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, sweat, and the metallic tang of blood. Patrons, black field hands, Cherokee railroad workers, and white runaways with guilty eyes, turned as Elvis, Darlene, and Lila Ray stumbled through the door. "Ain't no sanctuary here," growled the bartender, a one-eyed giant named Big Moses. He leveled a shotgun at Elvis. "Colonel Parker's men been here. Offered $10,000 for your head." Before Elvis could speak, Lila Ray stepped forward. Her voice, still raw from Scratch's chains, cut through the silence. "You know who I am." Big Moses froze. Behind the bar hung a faded photo. Blue Hawkins, young and grinning, arm around a teenage Big Moses. "Lila Ray," he whispered. The room erupted. "Blue's girl," someone cried. "She alive." Big Moses lowered the shotgun. "Then y'all family. But sing first. Prove you ain't demons." The Hymn of Hollow Bones. Lila Ray took the stage, a splintered piano her pulpit. Her fingers danced, and the room stilled. "My mama's bones are hollow, Lord. The devil drank her song. But the river's got a heartbeat, and the righteous ain't all gone." The walls trembled. Patrons clutched their chests, tears cutting through dirt in defiance. Even Elvis's pick glowed. It's with humming and harmony. Darlene gripped his arm. "She's healing him. The song, it's purging Scratch's poison." But Lila Ray's chorus shattered as a bottle flew. Colonel Parker's men, 3 hired thugs with brass knuckles and Confederate flag pins, burst in. "Hand over the king," snarled the leader, spitting at Elvis's boots, "or we burn this cesspool to the ground." Big Moses raised a shotgun. Lila Ray kept playing. The devil's in the details, but God's in the fire. The thugs lunged, but the music warped. The piano keys sprouted thorns. The strings on Elvis's guitar writhed like serpents. One man screamed as his tattooed arms bled the lyrics Lila Ray sang. Another dropped, choking on his own hate. The last thug fled, but not before hissing at Elvis. "Parker's with him now. The horn man. They comin' for the girl." Later, in a back room reeking of moonshine and mildew, Big Moses handed Elvis a cracked jar of blackstrap molasses. "Blue's blood's in that pick," he said. "So's mine." Elvis stiffened. "Yours." "We was brothers," Moses rasped. "Scratch came after Blue. I fought him. Lost my eye, but this got left behind." He lifted a jar. A shriveled black horn floated in the syrup. Piece of Scratch himself. Blue said it'd be the key to killing him. Lila Ray touched the horn. It disintegrated, dust coated her fingers. "We need more." Darlene snorted. "How?" "Go back to the Crossroads and ask nicely." "No," Lila said. "We go to Hell's Half-Acre, the juke joint Scratch owns, where he hoards soul songs." Elvis's pick burned. Blue's voice hissed. "It's a trap, boy." "Maybe," Elvis said, standing. "But it's the only stage big enough for what's coming." Hell's Half-Acre was a rotting dance hall floating on the Mississippi. Its walls papered with wanted posters of dead bluesmen. Inside, Scratch sat atop a piano made of human teeth. Colonel Parker at his side, counting blood-stained cash. "Brave little roaches," Scratch crooned. "Came to burn down the house?" Elvis strapped on his guitar. "Came to play a duet." Lila Ray's fingers found the piano. Darlene gripped Big Moses' horn dust knife. The pick pulsed like a second heart. Scratch laughed until Lila Ray sang. "I am my father's daughter. My mama's midnight cry. You can't own a soul, devil, when that soul knows how to fly." The floor split. Ghost musicians rose. Robert Johnson, Bessie Smith, Blue Hawkins. Their spectral hands joining Elvis's chords. The jukebox exploded, records spinning into shrapnel. Parker fled. Scratch roared, lunging for Lila Ray, but Darlene stabbed the horn dust blade into his chest. "This is for my daddy." Scratch howled, his form unraveling into smoke and locusts. "This ain't over, Presley. I'll bury you in your crown." The dance hall collapsed. Elvis grabbed Lila Ray and dove into the river as Hell's Half-Acre sank. Scratch's curses bubbling into silence. The neon cross above the New Daisy Theater flickered like a dying star. Inside, Elvis stood backstage, trembling, not from fear, from the pick in his hand. It was glowing again, burning with combined fury of every soul Scratch had stolen. On the marquee outside, the posters lied. Elvis Presley, comeback special. But tonight, he wasn't here to resurrect his career. He was here to bury it. Scratch's voice boomed from the rafters, dripping with mock pity. "Look at you, King. No crown, no army, just a rusty guitar and a girl who ain't yours to save." Lila Ray stood beside Elvis, her fingers interlaced with Darlene's. Big Moses lurked in the shadows, a sawed-off shotgun loaded with Robert Johnson's cursed fret wires. Colonel Parker's betrayal still stung. He'd sold him out, trading Elvis's soul for Scratch's promise of eternal wealth. But the real weapon hung around Lila's neck. Robert Johnson's lost guitar, its string spun from cemetery iron and a lynching rope. "You forgot something, Scratch," Elvis said, strapping the guitar on. "The blues ain't yours. They're ours." Scratch materialized in a plume of sulfur, his form towering. A horned shadow with Robert Johnson's face melting into Blue Hawkins, then Elvis's own. "You're a thief, Presley. Stole the blues, dress 'em up pretty. But tonight, you'll die begging for a gospel." Elvis struck the first note. The theater shook. Ghosts poured from the walls. B.B. King, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, Howlin' Wolf, their spectral hands gripping his. Lila Ray's voice soared. "You can't chain a river, can't jail flame," as Darlene and Moses hurled fretwire bullets into Scratch's shadow. But Scratch laughed. "You think this is new? I've eaten better legends." He lunged, claws raking Elvis's chest, and froze. The Memphis mud pick had pierced his own heart. Elvis stared, blood slicking his fingers. Blue's voice echoed through him. "The pick ain't a bridge. Boy, it's a mirror. Shows folks what they are. Now show him." Elvis yanked the pick free and plunged it into Scratch's guitar. "This is for every soul you stole." The instrument exploded, unleashing a cyclone of screams. Scratch's victims, clawing free from his gut. Their hands dragged him into the vortex, his curses fading to static. "You'll rot without me." "Maybe," Elvis whispered, "but we'll rot free." The theater fell silent. Lila Ray cradled the shattered guitar. Darlene knelt, clutching Colonel Parker's lifeless body. He'd taken a bullet meant for Moses. Elvis slumped against the stage, the pick crumbling to ash. Blood soaked his jumpsuit, darker than the stains on Blue's old denim. "Why'd you do it?" Lila Ray cried. "You knew the pick kept you alive." Elvis grinned. "Weak but wicked. Ain't no king forever, darlin'." Sides, he pressed Robert Johnson's guitar into her hands. "The world's yours now. Sing it right." His head fell back. The ghost bowed. August 16th, 1977, Graceland. The TV buzzed with breaking news. Elvis Presley dead at 42, heart failure. But in a tucked-away chapel in Clarksdale, Mississippi, a man in a frayed denim jacket played piano for a congregation of black sharecroppers, Cherokee elders, and white runaways. His face was lined, his curls gray, but his voice, raw and righteous, made the walls sweat. "Ain't no hound dog," he growled, winking at Lila Ray, now a gospel star with a Grammy and a .38 in her purse. Just a ghost with a groove. The Memphis mud pick? It's still out there. Sometimes it's a girl in Detroit belting protest punk. Sometimes it's a busker in New Orleans howling queer anthems. But that's the thing about the blues. You don't own 'em. You pass 'em on. The end?